Hello! Welcome to my draft review for the Moss Deep Battle Association Season 2. This is a points-based league. You can draft up to 10, or up to 12, minimum 10 mons. I had the 8th overall pick, 9th? I had the 9th overall pick, and it out of 12 people, and it was really interesting, the complex bands they did. So, a few of the most interesting ones to me: Kieran Black without Dragon Dance, Alakazam, Mega Alakazam without Nasty Plot. Those were the two big ones for me. The other main one was no Shell Smash Blastoise. I think that's it for the ones that are atypical, relatively speaking. Obviously, Mega Blastoise with Shell Smash is a big thing now because it's broken with that move, but yeah, the main thing that really piqued my ears, made me go, oh, was no DDKB, and I was praying to fucking Christ that dropped to me, because I have wanted to use Kieran Black again for such a long time, and with Icicle Spear, it would be really fun in this generation, and then it got picked right before me. It was one fucking pick before me and made it. I woke up because we used the draftleague.nl website, and that automatically pings you when somebody makes a pick. I'd fallen asleep before the draft had gotten to me to that point, and then I woke up and I looked at my phone, and the first thing I saw when I woke up was so and so right before me had drafted Kieran Black, no Dragon Dance. It is now your turn to pick. And I actually wanted to throw my phone out the window. Kidding. But I actually got kind of pissed as soon as I woke up. I was like, fuck. Damn it, I don't get to use KB. So, in the end, I decided, alright, let's review what's gone away so far. There are quite a few interesting things. I could try and go back and review round. Actually, I could do that really quickly because OBS is good. So, right, up to that point, what had been taken was, in order, Celesteela, Mega Mawile, Melmetal, Toxapex, which I thought was really weird, Dragapult, Mega Lop, Mega Arrow, KB, and then it got to me. So there were quite a few things in 18, I think, that were still there. There was a couple of 17-pointers that I wanted as well. Just reviewing, let me look back to the tier list here. What a couple of bonds I was looking at. Mega Gallade. Tornadus T was another one I was looking at, but I've used that thing a lot recently. Another interesting one was Urshifu, but I have it in PCL, obviously. I didn't want to overlap it. Zygarde was another thing I was looking at, and Galarian Darm and Latios were the other Mons, I believe, that were available that I was really interested in. And I guess Mega Zam, because it seems like a fun Mon to use. If I can use it right, it's similar to Mega Arrow, but special. But in the end, I decided to grab something I used in CBL Season 9 this season. Didn't use particularly well because I really wasn't feeling the team because it had a Gligar on it. And that was Tapu Koko. And so I grabbed Tapu Koko. Now this Mon, obviously, in CBL 9, I had access to Play Rough and Close Combat. Here, obviously, I don't because that's not a thing anymore. We now know that it's not a thing anymore. And that's pretty unfortunate because this Mon would be pretty busted with that. But I think it would be the first overall pick in pretty much every draft if that was the case. But this Mon is still pretty solid, and I feel like people undersell it a little bit. It was 17 points. The 18 pointers were all so good that, I don't know, without Play Rough and CC, I can see why people would see this, why people would see this Mon as less good than something like a Tornadus T that now got Nasty Plot. Mega Gallade, Mega Lot that can't get intimidated, it can U-turn out. Mega Alakazam without Nasty Plot, because Mega Alakazam been a good Mon for a while, honestly. Pretty underrated at first. I personally hated on it when the hype for it was rising, but I see why people really think that Mon is good now. I think it's definitely got a lot of good traits. Poco's still really solid, and in this league I do have access to the hidden powers, and that was the main thing I was looking at with Coco, was like, I can use hidden power, ice and ground and fire and everything. I'm actually gonna grab this. And another tempting Mon made it to me afterwards. Coco is one of my favorite Mons from Gen 7. This Mon is so fun to use. I didn't do very well with it in CBL, like I said, but sometimes you just have bad seasons and you don't feel it. But, you know, I'm kind of feeling it. I feel like I can definitely push Coco to its limits and definitely do well with it. The main draws to it, I think that the main things that make me still think it's one of the more solid mons in the format, its speed tier is great. I get that it only has 95 special attack, and with the terrain nerf, that's really not as good, and I 100% agree. It's still got good coverage. Grass Knot, plus, I mean, Nature's Madness as well. I think Nature's Madness is one of the best moves in the game, personally. It and Super Fang, really, really underrated moves, especially with the fact this mon gets Taunt, this mon gets Screens, this mon gets other utility moves like Fog, Roar. Yeah, it's just a really good Pokemon. And its coverage is good. It can punish ground types with Grass Knot. It can punish dark types with its other stab. It gets momentum in U-turn and Volt Switch. The fact that it's so fast is nice. I've talked about Tapu Koko for what, like 6 minutes now? And obviously going into this draft, I've talked about everything else. This mon's really good. It can also beat back grass types with Brave Bird. Another thing that was really tempting to me, and actually made it to me, and I thought was pretty underpriced, was Lando T. King of OU. This mon's amazing. Even with the Intimidate nerf, I still think that the fact that this thing has A, hidden power access, B, the fact that the utility on this mon is still so good. The fact that it gets Defog, Rocks, Intimidate, and it can pivot around. Its speed tier is good. It partners really well with Coco because they both momentum through each other. This thing is a pretty solid ground type. I feel like you need to get a pretty solid ground type on a Coco team, because odds are your opponent's going to bring their electric type, which is going to fuck with you, obviously, because you're putting up electric terrain for it. So this mon, I think, is probably one of the best ground types in the format, and I think this thing's still underrated, even though the Intimidate nerf is pretty bad. I can't intimidate stuff like Gallade, Lopunny, or Kangaskhan Pre-Mega anymore, but I think this mon is still really, really strong, and I feel like having it at 16 points, underselling it a little bit. This thing's utility is still really good. It's still a potent setup threat. It's still extremely versatile. And I think Lando is going to prove some people wrong this season, possibly. Maybe my performance will make it go into 17 points. We'll see. I don't feel like I'm that good anymore, but I don't know. if I can do well with this mon, that would be really fun. Up next, I was pretty confused as to how this made it back to me. It was a 14-point Heatran. I feel like that's underselling Heatran's. I feel like the drop-off between Heatran in ladder to league is pretty interesting. I feel like Heatran's definitely a lot worse in draft league than it is on the ladder. Mostly because certain archetypes you can prepare for a Heatran because you know it's on the opponent's team. But I feel like with the inherent hidden power chokes that this forces with Landorus and another pick I made later on, I feel like my opponents are going to struggle deciding which one they think is the biggest threat if they don't have the appropriate coverage. So let's say something like a Tapu Lele, for example. It's going to have, well, no, actually not a Tapu Lele, because my later pick is weak to fire. Well, there's certain matchups where Heatran is going to force a choke with this, a later pick, and Landorus, forcing them to pick between HP Ice, HP Ice, Fire, and Ground. So this is definitely a solid addition to my team. It's another Stealth Rocker, which is really important in Draft League to get a stockpile of them, at least 3. I feel like, personally, 4 is the sweet spot, but I kind of want to use this thing more offensively. My team structure isn't exactly the best to run offensive Heatran, but it's still a very, very solid threat for my opponents to prepare for, especially because it's so strong, and it is pretty slow. I'll give you that, but I still think a 14-point Heatran's enormous value. It's a really solid fairy check. It helps break through grasses, which Lando struggles with, and Coco sometimes. It depends on the grass type it's fighting. So definitely a really solid addition. Up next, I grabbed Keldeo with my round 4 pick. Keldeo, very nice special breaker. I feel like this is another just really solid up there mon, 15 points. I feel like that is the right spot for it. Definitely a really strong Pokemon. I got this because it partners well with Landorus. I feel like getting a really solid water type with Lando is pretty crucial. I think it was my RBA team that I had Lando and Greninja, and it's sort of a similar thing now that Keldeo gets Flip Turn. It's a water type that combos well with it because it resists ice and water, and then Lando obviously switches into electric. And with Greninja, it switched in on fighting. With Keldeo, I think there's really nothing else that it covers besides electric. I still think those two make a really nice pair, though. Really nice offensive pair. My team is starting to look like a Gen 7 OEU team. Coco, Lando, Heatran, this thing, but definitely really nice. I got a lot of setup spam. I got Calm Mind Coco, SD, Double Dance, and then my next pick is also a setup mon potentially most of the time. This thing's a really nice offensive mon, and Flip Turn definitely adds a lot of depth to this Pokemon's move pool. So definitely a really solid mon. Good speed tier as well. It's a nice throw between 130 and 91. 108 is pretty nice. So up next, I grabbed this thing. 1 second. Okay. I grabbed this thing. I felt like it was a Metacrozma. I felt like it was a really, really solid addition to my team. You can see my team's getting pretty top heavy at this point. You have a budget of 120 mons. This thing was 17, 16, 14, 15, and now 16 again. I'm going really hard in these first 5-6 rounds. This mon's just a really good breaker, and I felt like getting a good fighting check to pair well with Heatran was a pretty good idea. Getting a bulky Psychic is nice. The fact that this mon's so scary at Team Preview, the setup it gets now, its depth is pretty good. It's got SD, Rock Polish, Dragon Dance, Calm Mind. It's got all of the good setup moves aside from Quiver Dance, which if they gave it, I would probably sue Game Freak for giving this thing Quiver Dance. This thing is very, very solid, very, very scary. Forces a lot of prep, and it's strong, bulky, pretty versatile. The problem I have is that it doesn't afford me any more momentum, which my team kind of really, really has going for it at this point. But I mean, you can't really ask for it all for this mon, and I feel like getting this thing, potentially forcing my opponent to expand what they need to prep for on my team is really, 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 really beneficial. So I feel like this mon was pretty good for the round I got it in. Up next, I want to get a really solid Mega, and I want something faster than Coco because I want to control the speed in most matchups. Like I said, Mega Arrow got taken, and that was the Mega I was kind of looking at from the start because I really wanted to A, use it again, and B, try it out because it gets DD and dual Wing Beat now, which is really scary. But I didn't end up getting that. I ended up getting Mega Beedrill. Its dual stabs are really nice. It can help break through fairies, which Coco, Keldeo both struggle with. It's another fairy check, which I don't have to lean on Heatran for. Obviously, it's not a fairy switch-in because it's frailer than a woman in menopause, but it hits fairies really, really hard. There's certain fairies that can potentially switch in on a decent amount of poison types, like Klefki or Diancie, that this thing hits with Drill Run. It's got Knockoff, which is really nice for ghost types. And yeah, and it's just a really solid mon. It's got U-Turn, obviously, and the Baton Pass for me to ignore Pursuits. So, definitely a really solid mon. The speed tier is amazing. It's great momentum mon. And yeah, it's just really versatile. Getting Grounded Poison is also really nice, especially one that I'm probably going to bring to a lot of games because this mon is really solid, reliable, useful, and it's really strong. People are going to have to prepare really hard for this thing as well. So this plus like Keldeo, I think, makes a nice offensive core on their own, but add on a Lando, add on a Coco, and on a Necrozma, people are going to really struggle with it. 13 points at this point, so I'm looking really thin on the budget. So I'm going to have to start obviously dipping into the lower parts of the list, and that is exemplified by me trying to seek out a bit of value, going for the 7-point Fortress. I've dogged on Fortress a lot in the past, and this is the one I was talking about earlier for the hidden power chokes. I figured it's probably easy to get because I've drafted a bunch of high value mons, and it's pretty much impossible for me to want to get Scizor at this point. Mega Scizor was taken. That was the other Mega I was looking at earlier on, like round 3. But I saw Heatran there, and I think Mega Scizor was still on the board at that point. I'm not 100% sure. It might have been. I don't remember. I don't feel like going back to check. So it was pretty unfortunate, but I wanted Heatran more anyway. I feel like that plus Heatran's a decent core on their own, but yeah. I didn't think Heatran was going to make it back to me if Mega Scizor was still there, and I wanted that more. Fortress is really... The main reason I got it was because I wanted another sturdy-ish fairy check. I know this thing's Spadef isn't that great, but it still can switch in on a decent amount of the fairies in the game. This mon is definitely good for 7 points. Again, I've hated on this thing a lot in the past. I stand by a lot of my criticisms of this mon because it's relatively passive. It doesn't have good recovery. I mean, it has pain split, but like, it's pain split. It's known for being unreliable. Otherwise, Dust Noir and Dust Clops would be really good mons. Well, really good. Relatively speaking, they'd be pretty decent. Give me 1 second. I gotta let my cat out. I think this is... So, yeah, Fortress, I think, being another fairy check is very nice. And the fact that I get so many hazards is really nice. The fact that it's a spinner, so you can potentially clear hazards for the likes of this thing, and Lando is really good. Mega Beedrill is what that thing's called. So, yeah, and I wanted a bit more removal because I don't rely on default Coco B or Lando throughout the season. I don't want to lean on those. So yeah, I decided to grab this. 7 points, I feel like it's a pretty good pickup. I would think its value would be like 8, but I mean, maybe 9. I don't think it's like a tier 4 Pokemon in like a GBA style draft, so I don't know. I feel like it was maybe a tad underpriced, but I think I'm not a super big fan of this mon. But the moment the slow volts, which is also nice, it's another another point I wanted to drive home with this thing. It's a decent solid pickup. It's 7 points, you know. Yeah. Up next, 11 points, I grabbed Grimmsnarl. So I really wanted a good dark type. There weren't too many options left. I could have tripled up on steals and grabbed one Bisharp, which was a point cheaper, and B, a really solid physical breaker. And probably that was the way to go, especially because that's not a fairy weak, and it's kind of a more reliable ghost resist because it has pursuit access. And although it's weak to... a lot of dark types get Sludge Bomb as well as Focus Blast. I mean, only a couple. Wait, ghost types. I don't know what I'm thinking. Anyway, I got this because it's a good ghost resist. I wanted a good dark type because I was looking pretty ghost vulnerable at this point, and my next pick is also something to try and ease and soothe the ghost weakness a tiny bit, even though it's pretty offensive. This mon, its bulk isn't the best, but I mean 95 HP is still really good, and you can make those defenses work. It depends on what kind of set you want to run, but Prankster is definitely a really good ability. And I was also lacking in priority, so I wanted to grab a bit more for a budget. And I feel like Grimmsnarl is definitely a good Pokemon. It's strong, obviously. Look at that attack. That's pretty sexy. It's got good coverage because it's got the Elemental Punches, Power Whip, Stomping Tantrum. This mon's got a lot going for it in terms of the coverage department. It's got setup options and bulk up and Power Up Punch, I think. Yeah. So if I wanted to run Assault Vest, Power Up Punch. Gets priority trick, which is amazing. Foul play, like this thing has defensive utility as well because it gets screens. Priority screens is something I'm a big fan of. Klefki was a real big instrumental part of my CBL win, and I really love that mon. So a mon that plays similar to Klefki but has access to taunt, trick, or I mean Klefki has trick too, but as well as trick, and it has a better potential of setting up because Calm Mind Klefki, not the best use of it. I did bring it like 1 or 2 times throughout the CBL run, but I think Bulk Up Grimmsnarl, a lot more viable. That's the fucking word I'm looking for as a bring. Its shiny isn't that bad. Maybe I'll fucking distract someone with how grotesque the color scheme is. Maybe that'll be a surprise factor, is the Como effect, but I really like this Pokemon, especially for the price. So, up next, I wanted to grab an okayly solid normal type, like one that can potentially have some bulk value to it. And so I decided to grab Tauros for 5 points. For 5 points for Tauros, the speed tier is good, the offense is good, the abilities are good. I mean, Intimidate and Sheer Force are both really good abilities. This thing's coverage. Throat Chop gets boosted by Sheer Force. Rock Slide gets boosted by Sheer Force. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of good to this Pokemon. It's a good Scarfer. Its defenses aren't that good, but I mean, pop an Assault Vest on this thing, you give an Assault Vest, Shard Vest. Whew, I'm having a stroke. I'm gonna go to bed after this. Assault Vest, Red High Horsepower. This is a messy video, but I have Assault Vest Tauros, and have it tank a potential hit or two, and then hit the enemy for good damage with Body Slam, Rock Climb, because again, cut moves are allowed. It's a decent Pursuit Trapper. For the price, 5 points, this is definitely a gimme pickup. I wanted Ambipom at first, because like I said, I wanted a bit of value priority, and just Sucker Punch on Grimmsnarl, and I think Beedrill gets Quick Attack, and Aqua Jet on Keldeo. It's not the strongest, so Ambipom got picked. I ended up getting Tauros. Perfectly fine with me. Tauros is good. I was also looking at Chinchino, which was also 5 points, and Dodrio, which was 3, and I feel like Dodrio for 3 points is a really good value, but I decided to go with Tauros in the end because A, I've looked at this one for a while, and B, it's definitely bulkier than Dodrio is. So up next, Water Check. I need a Water Check. I need a decent water resist. I am looking really water weak at this point. My only decent water switch in is nothing, so I guess Keldeo. So I decided to grab Cradily, and I wanted to get his, like I said, stockpile up on rockers. It's between this, which was 3 points, and Tangela, which was 4. I grabbed this because it's an immunity, and I wanted to get a decent low tier Mon that I think is a sturdier defensive glue. I really do think that Tangela is an underrated Pokemon. For 4 points, it's definitely worth it, but it was probably better to get that, and then I think I had 3 points left after I grabbed Cradily, so I'd have had 2, so I could have grabbed like a ghost type. I don't think it was a ghost type in 2. I could have grabbed something decent, is what I'm trying to say. Or I could have grabbed like Dodrio, Tangela, and Spiritomb or something, which is 4 points. But in the end, I decided to just grab this plus 2 other Pokemon at the end. I got this because like it's a water immunity, and it gets rocks, and it's not weak, and I got Leech Seed. I mean, it's relatively weak, but it's pretty bulky, so you know, it's sort of like Gastrodon, but its typing's not as good defensively because it's weak to a lot of stuff. Whereas Gastrodon's only got 1 weakness, obviously. But A, I like that this thing gets rocks. B, I like the new addition in terms of Leech Seed onto this Pokemon. Like, that definitely increases its value a lot. And what I like over Tangela is that it gets reliable 16 PP and non-weather affected recovery. And the fact that it can go on either side of the spectrum. I think Tangela for the value is definitely better because it's got other things going for it. It's got Powder's access, Stun, and Sleep. And Poison, I guess, if you want to do that for some fucking reason instead of running Toxic. And it's got Knockoff, which this thing lacks, but overall I think Cradily was decent value. Plus this let me get my last 2 Pokemon. So for 1 point, I wanted to get a Ghost type. There wasn't 1 and 2. It was between Dracoloak, which I ended up going with, Banette, and there was another, let me check. I guess there really wasn't another Ghost type I was looking at. It was between Dracoloak and Banette. That's like picking between the Nazis and the brown shirts, so I went with the brown shirts and got Dracoloak. This Mon is okay. Its speed tier is nice. The fact that it gets U-turn is alright. And the fact that it has more priority with Sucker Punch is pretty okay. It's not super passive. A Wisp Hex set is definitely good with a Violate on this thing. Aside from that, though, like this Mon's, and it gets 2A, which is pretty nice. But aside from that, obviously this Mon's not coming to too many games. I drafted next PDLA. I dropped a Spiritomb for it, which was pretty funny, but yeah. It's also an okay water resist for a point. Like it's decent value for a point, right? So I ended up grabbing that, and then that left me with 2. I had a couple options in tier 2. I was looking at a Alolan Eradicate for another decent ghost check that also is a Pursuit Trapper. That ended up getting taken. It's available now, but I think my pick, is a better Mon. I was also looking at Machoke. The priority for Machoke would have been nice, and the fact that it's a status switch in. It's a backup fighting type, so I can pressure normals and steals a bit harder. I ended up going with Reboot. So this thing is decent. Libero plus this attack stat is it's pretty good. Getting stab on everything is nice. It was also Frogadier I was looking at. I ended up going with this over Frogadier because although Frogadier has access to spikes and T-spikes, this Mon has Sucker Punch. And like I said, I was lacking a bit in the priority department. Getting a Mon that has the potential for stab Sucker Punch is pretty nice. The coverage isn't as fleshed out. I don't even think this gets Pyro Ball. No, it does not. It does give Flare Blitz though, which is pretty nice. So it's decently strong. And for 2 points, I'm not against picking this Mon up. I got the double NFE off the end, so that's pretty good. So if you want a recap at the end, I'm just going over my team. Okay, I'm getting another Steel check, and the fact that it's I mean, it can switch in on fairy types within a Violite, probably. I feel like it's okay for 2 points. It's not coming to too many games. So, going over it one more time. Coco, Lando T, Heatran, Keldeo, Necrozma, Mega Beedrill, Fortress, Grimmsnarl, Tauros, Cradily, Dracoloak, and Reboot. So, that's what I ended up going with. Yeah, thanks for watching. This was pretty long-winded. The 25 minutes, Jesus. The longest draft review I've done in a while, but I wanted to go into an in-depth thought process on this one. Yeah, thanks for watching. I had a lot of fun drafting this team. Points is just so... I like drafting with points a lot. And I wanted to draft a relatively top-heavy team this time. Not as top-heavy as I think I could have potentially gone. I could have grabbed like Mega Medicham instead of Beedrill at that point or something. Maybe like some other crazy shit instead of Necrozma. But I decided to go relatively tame-ish, so I didn't have to end up with like full NFEs later in the draft. I might, next points draft I'm in, I might try and potentially go super duper top heavy. We'll see how that works out. But yeah, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Leave a like if you liked. Subscribe if you really liked. And have a good day. See yas.